It's dark, and we're approaching Halloween, which means that the witching hour is close at hand. Which means it's time for rarities to occur. It's time for the undead to walk the earth. It's also time for me to take a step back from doing an album review, or a concert review, or just an entire discography review, and go down to the simplest of elements, a track review. The track in which I'll be taking part in this particular morning/night will be the track Lillith Immaculate by Cradle of Filth, which will be appearing on their forthcoming record, Darkly Darkly Venus Adversa, which is set to be released on the 1st of November, which actually caused many people to think that the album was going to be entitled All Hallows Eve, even though, for all intents and purposes, All Hallows Eve would actually be the 30th of October, not All Saints Day, which is, of course, November the 1st. Of course, Cradle of Filth is a band that really needs no introduction. They're arguably one of the most popular British heavy metal bands since Iron Maiden. This is something that is supported both by their sales figures, not to mention their rabid cult following. This is a band that originally touched base with death and black metal whenever they first came out in the early 1990s, and has slowly but surely actually commercialized their sound to get a more rabid and a little bit more, so to speak, commercialized fan base. Like them or hate them, Cradle of Filth is a band that if you were to approach 10 different people on the streets, I can guarantee you that at least half of them, if not more, would know who this band is. Now, the band Lillith Immaculate is actually quite a nice little fixture here. Their last particular album, which was entitled, whatever it was entitled, Godspeed something or other, was actually a very masculine concept towards the whole idea of Gilda Reese. And this album is going to focus more on Lilith, who is, of course, the biblical first wife of Adam, of the original Adam and Eve stories, kind of the person that you don't hear about, the demon, so to speak. And what they're intending to do with this particular concept is kind of throw this in a little bit more of a modern day, story, kind of a very Victorian style story. And this track definitely incorporates their signature style. But it actually, in my opinion, blends a little bit of the old and the new, which is something that makes this track very accessible to both new and old fans alike. Now, Godspeed actually performed very well. It was an album that peaked at number 48 on the Billboard charts, and it sold about 14,000 copies on its first week, which may not seem like a lot. However, for a band of the metal magnitude of the extreme metal genre today, this is actually quite well, especially for it to be peaking this high. Of course, in 2010, there have been many albums of the extreme metal genre that have done very well. However, whenever this album is released, I'll be very interested to see where exactly it were to fall, considering Dimmu Borgir's last album peaked at, I believe it was number 9 on the FYE charts, but we of course know how inaccurate those could be. Lillith Immaculate is set to be track number 7 on this particular release, and it definitely has all of the Cradle of Filth trademarks. It has that fast, quick riffing that has just a very bold statement to it. It's something that they've been doing very well here in the past decade. It's something that's actually been more incorporate to their commercialized sound, which is what a lot of people have said. It almost has a dark recollection to a darkened thrash metal. Kind of like what would happen if Merciful Fate would mix with Iron Maiden. It's a very cool little concept. It's a very unique idea that has caused them a lot of widespread acclaim, much to the chagrin of their original black metal faithful. Now, this also contains keyboards. The clean vocals that you will hear of the feminine variety are, of course, not those of Sarah Jezebel Deva, and have not been for quite some time. Instead, the Abigail Williams keyboardist / frontwoman, or should I say keyboardist, has now become sort of like a second frontwoman, so to speak, for this particular band, replacing Jezebel Deva and doing a heck of a good job. If there's one thing that I will say, that compared to the terrible female vocals that were found on Gateways by Dimmu Borgir, these are vocals that are absolutely ethereal, very well done, very well placed, not to mention they are in fact beautiful. There's nothing in these particular vocals that is harsh on the ears, or that really requires a certain adaptation in order to enjoy them. The song itself is a massive 6-minute long opus, which is not uncommon for Cradle of Filth. However, this is one that does something else that a lot of their tracks of recent memory have certainly done. It undulates the way in which you would expect it to. It does have the dark thrash riffings. It does have the beautiful keyboard synth elements that are provided by Ashley of Abigail Williams, which is fantastic. And it also has really a very thematic, cyclical nature to it, where it seems as though the ending begins as the beginning did. And this is something that's kind of integral to their sound, and not to mention to their whole conceptual album approach. This is something that sometimes is abandoned by other bands, but this is a band that does it very well. This is a very strong track from a guy that really hasn't listened to Cradle of Filth with all that much of a focus or intent over the past couple of years. This is certainly a step in the right direction. It's a promising sign. It's something that I definitely enjoy, and I think that you will too. So, as Halloween approaches, as we draw closer and closer to that particular day, it's going to be very ironic, and it's going to be very interesting to see where exactly this album lies. Will the Beasts come out and pick up this album by their band? Or instead will the Jackals just pass it by? I think if you heard this song, Lillith Immaculate, off of the forthcoming album, you won't be a jackal, instead you'll be one of the beasts. And you'll be able to say loud and proud, Cradle of Filth is certainly back on the attack.